So the last two videos were only 8 minutes, and that was because I was trying to space it out. But the way I ended up spacing it out, I was left with a good chunk of footage afterward. So it was either make one big final episode for the Foxy part of the series I'm doing, or split it into another 8 minute video and then put a 7 minute video afterward. And the way I saw it, I thought it would be better to just do it all in one shot so that the next videos can be on the other characters. And the reason why the Foxy videos are probably going to be a lot longer than the other guys is because, again, Foxy is a major character, but also, as you will eventually see, Foxy has one of the most unique body types when it comes to the, I guess, recreations of the OGs or variations of the OG. You know, like Sister Baby, that sounds like a nun. Circus Babies. I was trying to say is, characters like Circus Baby have their own unique body types, and because they're the first one in their line, they don't need to specify who they are and all that fun stuff. But what I was trying to say is, normally Foxy, like in the first game, has a unique body shape. Meanwhile, Chica, Bonnie, and Freddy all share the same body mold, but just with a different head. And that's very similar for the other three. But more importantly, there are actually some differences between the Chica and Bonnie and Freddy, but you're not here to hear about them yet. When I do the video on them, I'll talk about that. So, lore time. So this is the spoiler section. So, in the small chance I actually end up making this series, I guess spoilers ahead for that series, since it probably will take years for me to actually get to it since I'm so behind on all my other projects. I left things off on a cliffhanger when I said Foxy solved the murder, so let me establish something really quick. These are a new line of murders. Basically, the reason why the series is called Repeating Melody is because history repeats itself, and a lot of times in songs, there's a chorus that gets, reused over and over again. And in this case, this is a new location with new killers, new animatronics, a new situation, and William Afton isn't directly involved, and yet, murders still happen. And this line of murders is, despite how cutesy and sweet all the animatronics are and stuff like that, I decided to take things in a little bit of a darker turn. Maybe I shouldn't phrase it like that. Younger me, who originally wrote this series, took things in a darker turn, and I think it's interesting enough to keep it. Like, I think it would be interesting if all the kids didn't technically die in the same way, and each of them had their own individual storylines, and what happened to them and how much they care about things, Anyways, each of the kids die in a very specific way because the killer is just really hates them personally. Like, this is a personal vendetta thing and not just William Afton being an opportunist who targets children because he's a pathetic loser who I would kick in the nuts. Anyways, back to Foxy. Oh, I should specify, he didn't witness all of the murders. But, like I said, repeating melody, history repeats itself. There is a section of the story where it's revealed that Foxy had his own little Foxy run, run, run situation where he tried to go save the kids or see what happened, and all he did was get faced with the killer and a bunch of dead bodies. Specifically, each of the murders of the kids did not happen on the same day. They weren't abducted on the same day. They were led to the pizzeria after hours due to, I won't get into it here since it's not super important, but Foxy witnesses 2 of the murders, or I should say the aftermath of 2 of the murders. And it hurt him very personally because one of the people who were killed, one of the children, was one of his favorite kids. Now, the reason why Foxy is such a grumpy old man and isn't a big fan of the kids who come to Pirates Cove anymore is because he doesn't want to get emotionally attached to any of them just to watch them die. Because any of them who get too close to the franchise or anyone who gets too close to the franchise ends up getting killed. So Foxy has this, he has a funny little pirate accent and he's really chipper, but the second any of the night guards or any of the staff try to get close to him emotionally, he immediately starts being cold and standoffish and dropping the accent. He is so emotionally hurt by what happened that he just doesn't want to open himself up to getting that emotionally hurt again. Also, ever since the incident, Foxy has been very aggressive towards maintenance staff and anyone who could possibly be the killer. They never got to see the person without the mask, but kind of like how Withered Foxy in FNAF 2 can sort of see through the mask, this version of Foxy heard the voice of the killer enough to recognize who they are when he hears their voice, to the point that Foxy, like, figures out who the person is, or will, go out of their way to, like, follow that person and to get in the way of that person, like, just, like, moving around the pizzeria, because they're very much, like, suspicious that it is that person, but can't confirm because, well, I was gonna save this for the killer section, but let's just say they wear a special mask that makes the other animatronics struggle to identify them when they are around. And you're probably wondering, if you're, aware of this franchise and can make an educated guess, you're probably wondering, hey, if this person is a staff member who has access to, like, a special mask that messes with the animatronics, and I clearly hinted that it's someone with has maintenance access, how come this person hasn't just reset the animatronics memory when I clearly made it clear that when the animatronics act weird, they might get rebooted or have their memories erased? And the answer is, one of his other secondary abilities is that as long as the spirit of the little girl is inside of him, his memories of that night will always be restored over and over again, even to the point that he wishes he could forget as easily as the other animatronics can. Speaking of possession, I should probably specify at this point, the thing about Melody is she is the only animatronic at the restaurant who isn't, like, fully possessed all the time or has a spirit directly attached to her. But Foxy does. And Foxy is probably one of the only animatronics who acknowledges the fact that they are getting possessed, even to the night guard, and is probably the most open and honest about the situation. And that's because, his victim, the child who's with him, was someone who he actually knew and cared about. And he liked to call her his first mate. So his victim is female. And I should probably explain how he knew this girl specifically, since, it is a robot, and I should explain, like, how it's not, like, weird or anything. So, unlike in the original, like, games where we took forever to learn all the victims' names, and we don't get to know them personally and how they were when they were alive, humanize the victims, in this series we do. Early on, you get names of all the victims. You even get to see their missing posters, and I say missing posters because technically their bodies were never found, but everybody kind of knows they're dead because it's been a few years since they've gone missing, and nobody knows that the last places they was the pizzeria because, it wasn't during, like, opening hours. So they're technically missing kids, just like in the other series. These kids are also regulars at the pizzeria, however, so the police were, a bit, like, suspicious because, the only thing these kids have in common, despite, because they don't live in the same area, they don't have the same neighborhood, they're not even part of the same social class, they don't even hang out at school, they don't even have the same school, is that they go to Freddy's basically every single day because their parents are basically, like, they don't pay attention to them enough, or the kids just sneak off and go there anyways. So they're children who are unsupervised constantly and are constantly at the pizzeria. So the police were really heavy on the pizzeria for, like, figuring out, the crime, but they never, found them, you know what I mean? And this kid was named Frankie. Frankie, her whole name is Francine, but she doesn't like her full name, so she goes by Frankie. And she would wear an eye patch all the time, regardless of the fact that it damages her, like, perception of distance. And that's because she thinks pirates are so cool, and she thought Foxy was so cool. And she would watch Foxy shows over and over again to the point where she memorized each of the lines in the pre-recorded showtime. And Foxy is allowed to, back in the early days before the murders, to walk around and talk to the guests. And because Frankie was there every single day, he spent the most time with her, and he was one of the few animatronics who was bold enough to like actually move around during the day and break protocol. And he would play video games with her, specifically arcade games. He would hit the photo booth with her because, you know, they were like friends. Like, he genuinely cared about this kid. He was like a second big brother figure to her. And I mean second big brother because one of the other victims, Theodore, aka Teddy, was her, you know, her actual brother. And he is very protective of this kid and her spirit. And is one of the few animatronics whose main goal is not to preserve the pizzeria or preserve himself, but to have justice be given for these kids. He will do everything in his power to do so, even if it means getting rid of a night guard or, you know, getting destroyed in the process, or even taking down the franchise with him. And that's why he's the second most important animatronic character in the cast, because all the other ones are kind of just selfishly trying to stay alive, while he has greater goals and ambitions and is a little bit more emotionally deep than all the others. So there's only like one or two things left of the things to mention about Foxy at this point, so let's quickly go over it. The animatronics and the children's spirits are, you know, separate, and the animatronics are intelligent enough to have their own opinion. So, I'm not sure if I'm gonna still include this, but there was a, like, love triangle thing between the animatronics, and it wasn't as weird now that the animatronics in this version are, like, sentient, but I'm not sure if I'm going to include it anymore, so I'll probably mention it in, like, the other section, simply because, you know, to save on time. But it is something I might still include, but maybe I won't, you know, just to, like, save on time, or maybe simplify the love triangle aspect and exclude Foxy from it, because Foxy's side of it was kind of like, kind of pathetic, you know what I mean? The next thing, I guess, I'll end Foxy's little video off on is the event that happened that night from his perspective, that I plan on drawing at some point. It was seemingly an ordinary Tuesday night. Sure, two of the kids who were, you know, regulars didn't show up today, but hey, you know, occasionally they do miss days. Besides, old Captain Foxy wasn't, you know, like, actually friends with those kids. They were just customers, and he was much more interested in hanging out with and making sure that his first mate was having a good time, so that she won't stop going to the pizzeria and she won't stop being his friend. Deeply insecure about how silly he can come off sometimes, and some of the belittling comments some of the older kids make about how he's so old-fashioned and how he seems a little more cheap compared to the other animatronics. It's definitely not as bad as the comments Melody gets. They call her a fucked up Barbie doll or a creepy fucking thing, and avoid her like the plague. He was grateful that he's at least a cute, fluffy little thing, but he was designed to be cool. He's supposed to be cute and cool, and she seemed to be one of the few kids who thought he was just straight up cool. I mean, some of the adults seem to like him more than, like, the kids do. And that's just because he was based off of one of their favorite animatronics when they were children. He really hopes they update his routines, as he's bitterly thinking about the fact that he wishes that he could be on stage singing people's popular birthday songs, or singing songs off the jukebox system. Suddenly, he pauses for a moment as he realizes that he's been in stasis mode for a while. He should be in the mode where he's allowed to walk around during the nighttime, but just like yesterday, he seems to not be able to switch out of this mode. Suddenly, something picks up on his ears, and his inner security system activates. It's the sound of a distressed human, according to his system, and suddenly he's finally allowed to unlock out of his stasis mode. He stretches his legs for a moment and starts making his way towards the noise. He thinks to himself it's probably just a stray cat that got in here, and it's another false read like a few weeks ago. But the more he gets closer, the more the sounds start to sound more similar. It's, oh no. No. That's Frankie, and he begins to run fast to the opposite side of the pizzeria, to the area that's been perfectly blocked off by this point. It hasn't been used since the incident when the pizzeria didn't even open yet. And where, I want to think about it, he just barely got into that room when all he saw was Frankie laying on the ground with her brother holding her gently. They are both not moving as the rabbit stares directly into his eyes. Too slow, huh, Captain Foxy? Not even thinking, he runs straight at the criminal, ready to tackle them to the ground. They try to swing their plastic hook that is not even in the slightest threat. They are met with an electric shock of a taser and everything. And here's the final reference sheet for Foxy. As you can see, there are some things that didn't show up on the actual speed paint that I just did off screen. And yeah, thanks for watching. Next episode should be a combination of Chica, Bonnie, and Freddy. Bye-bye.